We were looking at wedding venues when my girlfriend asked, "Would you be okay if my ex walks me down the aisle?" My name is Marcus, and I'd been dating Lisa for 2 years. We were standing in this beautiful historic ballroom, talking to the venue coordinator about catering packages, when she dropped that bomb completely out of nowhere. I stared at her, thinking I'd misheard. "Your ex? Why would your ex walk you down the aisle instead of your dad?" Lisa got this weird look on her face and said her father wasn't in the picture anymore. That her ex, Steve, was the closest thing to a father figure she had. She said it quickly, like she'd rehearsed it, then immediately changed the subject back to flower arrangements. The whole drive home, I couldn't stop thinking about it. In 2 years together, Lisa had never mentioned anyone named Steve. She told me her longest relationship before me lasted 8 months in college, but now suddenly there was this significant ex who was important enough to walk her down the aisle. When I asked about him later that night, she got defensive and said it was complicated, that Steve was much older, more like a mentor, and they'd stayed close after their relationship ended. She made it sound like I was being jealous and controlling for asking questions. Over the next few weeks, I started paying attention to Lisa's phone habits. She'd always been pretty open about her messages, but now she tilted her screen away when texting certain people. When I asked who she was talking to, she'd say, "Work stuff," or "My cousin Amy." But one evening I glanced over and saw a text that said, "Can't wait to see you this weekend. Miss you so much." The contact name was just S with a heart emoji. Lisa noticed me looking and quickly put her phone face down. When I asked about it, she said Amy was going through a rough breakup and needed emotional support, but she'd never mentioned Amy having relationship problems before. The weekend Lisa said she was visiting Amy, I drove by her apartment building. Lisa's car wasn't there. I felt terrible for checking up on her, but something felt off about the whole situation. When she came home Sunday night, she seemed different, relaxed in a way that reminded me of how she acted after visiting her family back home in Ohio, but she'd said Amy lived across town, not hours away. I started asking more questions about Steve, how long they dated, where they met, why their relationship ended. Lisa's answers kept changing. First she said they dated for a year, then 6 months, then it's hard to explain the timeline. She said they met at a coffee shop, then later mentioned it was through mutual friends. When I pointed out the inconsistency, she got angry and accused me of interrogating her. 2 months before our wedding, Lisa said Steve wanted to meet me. We arranged dinner at a restaurant downtown. I was expecting someone around my age, maybe early 30s like Lisa. Instead, Steve looked like he was in his mid-50s. He had graying hair and the same green eyes as Lisa, the same nose shape, the same laugh. During dinner, he kept making comments about how proud he was of Lisa, how she'd grown into such an amazing woman. He talked about her childhood like he'd been there for all of it. He knew details about her kindergarten teacher, her fear of thunderstorms, stories that sounded more like a parent would know than an ex-boyfriend. When I asked how they met, Steve and Lisa exchanged this look. He said he'd known her since she was very young, that he'd watched her grow up. Lisa quickly added that he was exaggerating, that they'd only started dating when she was in college. But something about the way he said it, the way he looked at her, the familiar gestures they shared, made my stomach drop. After dinner, as we walked to our cars, I heard Steve say, "Love you, sweetheart," to Lisa. Not love you like a friend or ex, but love you like a father says to his daughter. That's when I realized who Steve really was, and why Lisa had been lying to me for 2 years. I stand frozen in the parking lot, watching Lisa's face transform from confusion to horror as she realizes what I've just figured out. "Marcus, it's not," she starts, but I cut her off. "He's your father, isn't he? Not your ex. Your actual father." The words hang between us in the cold night air. Lisa's eyes, those green eyes that match Steve's, exactly fill with tears. "Let me explain," she whispers, reaching for my hand. I step back, my mind racing through every conversation we've had about her family over the past 2 years. Every inconsistency, every vague answer, every time she changed the subject when I asked about her dad. "You told me your father wasn't in the picture anymore," I say, my voice surprisingly steady despite the anger building inside me. "But he is in the picture. He's been in the picture this whole time. You've just been calling him your ex-boyfriend. He's just..." Lisa swallows hard. "He's been like a father figure to me. That's all. Don't lie to me anymore." I snap. I saw how he looked at you. I heard him say, "Love you, sweetheart." That wasn't an ex-boyfriend. That was a father talking to his daughter. Lisa's shoulders slump in defeat. "Can we please talk about this somewhere else? Not in a parking lot?" "I need to think," I tell her. "I'm going home. Alone." I get in my car without looking back at her, my hands shaking as I grip the steering wheel. The drive home is a blur. My mind keeps replaying dinner, noticing all the signs I should have seen earlier. The way Steve knew about Lisa's childhood fears, the identical laugh, the familiar way they communicated without words. At my apartment, I pour myself a whiskey and open my laptop. I type Lisa Calloway and Steve into the search bar, not really expecting anything concrete. But then I find an old digitized newspaper from Lisa's hometown in Ohio. It's her mother's obituary from 8 years ago. It mentions she's survived by her daughter, Lisa Calloway. Calloway, not Lisa's last name, which is Mitchell, but Steve's. My phone buzzes with a text from Lisa. "Please stop looking. I'm coming over. We need to talk." 10 minutes later, she calls, sobbing so hard I can barely understand her. "Please stop digging, Marcus. Please. I'll explain everything. I promise. Just, there are things you don't understand. Like the fact that Steve Calloway is your biological father, not your ex-boyfriend." The line goes silent except for her ragged breathing. "How did you know his last name?" she finally asks, her voice small. "Your mother's obituary. It listed you as Lisa Calloway." She starts crying again. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Please don't look up anything else." While waiting, I search through photos Lisa has shared with me over our relationship. There's one album on her social media marked childhood that I've seen before but never scrutinized. I scroll through pictures of a young Lisa at birthday parties, school events, family gatherings, and there he is, Steve, in the background of at least a dozen photos spanning years. Younger, with darker hair, but unmistakably him. Always slightly separate from the main group, but present. Watching, sometimes with his arm around Lisa's mother. When Lisa arrives, her eyes are red and puffy. She sits on my couch, hands trembling as she places her purse beside her. "Steve is my biological father," she confirms, staring at the floor. "My mother had an affair with him him when she was working as his secretary. He was married, still is. His wife never knew about me. So you invented this story about him being your ex-boyfriend? For 2 years, you've been lying to me about who this man is? I've been lying about it my whole life, Lisa whispers. It was how we protected the family reputation. Mom told everyone my father left before I was born. Steve would visit occasionally, but we always had this cover story that he was an old family friend. And when did he become your ex-boyfriend in this twisted narrative? I ask, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. When I went to college, it was easier to explain why a middle-aged man was visiting me or taking me to dinner. People assumed he was just some older guy I dated briefly who stayed in my life. I pace across my living room, trying to process the magnitude of this deception. So for 2 years, you've been lying to my face. Every time you mentioned your dad not being in the picture, every time you texted this man, every time you visited him, all lies. Lisa wipes her eyes. He rejected me for most of my life, Marcus. He'd show up for birthdays or graduations, then disappear for months. It's only in the last few years that he's actually wanted a relationship with me. And his wife? Does she know about you now? Lisa shakes her head. No, she never knew. That's why we've had to be so careful. Careful, I repeat. Is that what you call building our entire relationship on a foundation of lies? I was going to tell you after the wedding, she says desperately. Steve wants to be part of my life now. He wants to acknowledge me publicly. I stare at her. This woman I thought I knew completely. I need time to think about this. I can't process all of this right now. What are you saying? Her voice rises in panic. I'm saying I need space. Time apart. Lisa stands suddenly, her face contorted with fear. You can't tell anyone about this, Marcus. If people find out, if his wife finds out, Steve will disappear from my life again. And her voice breaks. I'll hurt myself if this gets out. I swear I will. The threat hangs in the air between us. Another manipulation in what now seems like an endless series of them. Go home, Lisa, I say quietly. We both need to think about what happens next. After she leaves, I sit in the dark of my apartment, wondering how I could have missed so many signs, wondering if anything about our relationship has been real, wondering if I ever really knew Lisa at all. I can't sleep, so I'm sitting in my kitchen at 3 a.m., scrolling through Lisa's social media. It's been 3 days since the parking lot confrontation, and I keep finding more evidence of the lies. Photos where Steve appears in the background at her college graduation. Comments from him signed S with that same damn heart emoji. How did I miss this for 2 years? My phone buzzes. It's Amy, Lisa's cousin. I texted her an hour ago, asking if we could talk. Hey Marcus, everything okay? Kind of late to be texting. I take a deep breath and call her. She answers on the second ring, voice groggy. Marcus, what's going on? Is Lisa okay? Amy, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Who is Steve to Lisa? Leston. The silence stretches so long I think she's hung up. Amy? She told you, didn't she? Her voice is barely audible. I figured it out. At dinner. I just need to know if the whole family is in on this. This fiction about him being her ex-boyfriend. Amy sighs heavily. Look, it's complicated. We've all known since we were kids that Uncle Steve is Lisa's real dad. It was this big family secret. Aunt Karen made us all promise never to talk about it. So when Lisa introduced him to people as her ex-boyfriend, we went along with it. Amy admits, it was easier than explaining the truth. His wife, his actual wife, she never knew about Lisa. The whole thing is just, it's messed up, Marcus. I rub my temples, feeling a headache building. Has he always been involved in her life? On and off. He'd disappear for months, then suddenly show up with expensive gifts. Lisa was always desperate for his attention. Amy pauses. Did you know he pays her rent? My stomach drops. What? Yeah, and like most of her expenses. Has for years. I thought you knew. After I hang up, I pull up our joint bank account. Lisa and I merged finances 6 months ago when we got engaged. I check the rent payments, they've been coming from an account I don't recognize. S. Callaway Investments. I'm still processing this when my doorbell rings. It's 4:15 a.m. I open the door to find Lisa standing there, eyes red-rimmed, clutching something in her hand. Can I come in? She asks quietly. I step aside, and she walks to my kitchen table, placing my grandmother's engagement ring down with a soft clink. I thought you might want this back, she whispers. I haven't said I'm ending things, I reply, though the thought has crossed my mind repeatedly. But you're thinking about it. She looks up at me. I've been honest about everything else in our relationship, Marcus, just not about Steve. Why now? I ask. Why is he suddenly so interested in meeting me, in being involved with the wedding? For 2 years, you've kept him separate from our life together. Lisa looks down at her hands. His wife died 6 months ago. Cancer. The pieces click into place. That's why you suddenly started spending more weekends with Amy. You were with him, weren't you? She nods, tears spilling down her cheeks. He needed someone, and for the first time in my life, he was actually reaching out to me instead of the other way around. I pull out my laptop and open a folder I've created over the past 3 days. I found these online, from his wife's funeral. Lisa's face crumples as I turn the screen toward her. There she is, standing at the back of a funeral service, wearing dark sunglasses, keeping her distance but unmistakably present. I couldn't even stand with him, she says, her voice breaking. I had to pretend I was just some distant family friend. Do you know what that's like? To not even be able to comfort your own father when he's burying his wife? So what changed? Why does he suddenly want to meet me? To be involved with our wedding? Lisa takes a shaky breath. He wants to acknowledge me publicly. Now that his wife is gone, he wants to tell people I'm his daughter. He wants to walk me down the aisle as my father, not as some made-up ex-boyfriend. I lean back in my chair, the magnitude of what she's saying hitting me. So, our wedding isn't even about us anymore. It's about Steve finally deciding to legitimize you after 30 years. Her phone rings, startling us both. She glances at the screen, her face paling. It's him. Answer it. She puts the phone to her ear. Dad, it's really late. What? You're where? Her eyes dart to me in panic. Outside Marcus's apartment? Why would you? I stand up and walk to my window. Sure enough, there's a black Mercedes idling at the curb. Tell him to come up, I say, my voice hard. 5 minutes later, Steve Callaway is sitting in my living room, looking more haggard than he did at dinner. He's wearing an expensive suit that hangs loosely on his frame. I apologize for the hour, he says, his voice the same smooth baritone I remember, but I couldn't sleep, knowing I've caused such distress between you two. You've caused distress by lying about who you are for 2 years, I say flatly. Steve nods. I understand your anger, but I'm here to make things right. He reaches into his jacket and pulls out a checkbook. I'd like to pay for the entire wedding, whatever you two want, and I'd like to offer you a gift of $50,000 to help you start your life together. I stare at him in disbelief. You think you can buy your way out of this? Marcus, Lisa says softly, but I cut her off. No, I want the truth. All of it. No more money, no more lies. Steve puts the checkbook away, his expression shifting. For a moment, he looks older, vulnerable. I have stage 4 pancreatic cancer, he says quietly. The doctors give me less than a year. Lisa gasps, her hand flying to her mouth. Dad, no, you never said. I didn't want to worry you, he tells her, then turns back to me. I want to make things right before I die. I want to acknowledge my daughter publicly. I want to walk her down the aisle as her father. I want the world to know she's mine. Lisa is sobbing now, clutching her father's hand. I watch them, this pair bound by blood and secrets, and realize I've become a supporting character in Steve's redemption story. Marcus, Lisa pleads, I know this is a lot, but please, can we just keep things as they are until after the wedding? Then we can tell everyone the truth. Steve looks at me with those green eyes so like Lisa's. I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but I'm asking for a chance to do the one thing I've never had the courage to do, be Lisa's father in public, not just in private. I stand up, walking to the window to gather my thoughts. Our wedding, which was supposed to be about our love and future, has somehow become the centerpiece of Steve Calloway's redemption plan. When I turn back, Lisa is looking at me with such hope and fear that it breaks my heart all over again. I need complete honesty from now on. I tell them both. No more secrets, no more lies. Lisa nods eagerly. Anything you want. Steve stands and extends his hand to me. You have my word. I take his hand, feeling the weakness in his grip, seeing the yellowing tinge to his skin that I hadn't noticed before. The signs of a dying man. One more question, I say. Was this wedding your idea, Steve? Did you suggest it to Lisa? His eyes flicker to Lisa before meeting mine again. I may have encouraged the timing, and there it is, the final piece of the puzzle. Our engagement, our wedding plans, all orchestrated to fit into Steve Calloway's timetable for redemption. I look at Lisa, wondering if I ever really knew her at all. I call my parents the next morning. I need someone who isn't caught up in Steve's web of lies to help me think clearly. Mom answers on the 3rd ring, her voice immediately concerned when she hears mine. Marcus, is everything okay? Can I come over? I need to talk to you and Dad about something important. An hour later, I'm sitting at their kitchen table, the same place I've processed every major crisis of my life. My mother sets a cup of coffee in front of me while Dad leans against the counter, arms crossed. Lisa's been lying to me, I begin, the words still feeling surreal. For our entire relationship, I tell them everything about Steve, the fake ex-boyfriend story, the cancer diagnosis, the bribe. Mom's expression grows increasingly horrified while Dad remains stone-faced, only his whitening knuckles betraying his anger. When I finish, Mom reaches across the table and grips my hand. You cannot marry this woman, Marcus. A marriage built on lies this profound will never survive. Your mother's right, Dad says, finally moving to sit beside me. This isn't just a white lie or an omission. This is a calculated, years-long deception involving her entire family. But she's explained why. No, Mom cuts me off sharply. Don't make excuses for her. If she could lie about something this fundamental for 2 years, what else is she hiding? What else will she hide in the future? I stare into my coffee, watching the cream swirl. I love her. You love who you thought she was, Dad says gently, not who she actually is. My phone buzzes. It's the wedding venue calling. I step outside to take it. Mr. Reynolds, I'm calling to confirm we received the full deposit payment for your September wedding. Mr. Calloway's check cleared yesterday. My stomach drops. I'm sorry, what check? The check covering the remaining balance for your wedding. Mr. Calloway called yesterday and paid everything in full, the venue, catering, flowers, everything. He mentioned it was a surprise for you and Miss Mitchell. I end the call and stand frozen on my parents' porch. Steve has already started taking over our wedding, just like he's apparently been controlling Lisa's life for years. When I return to the kitchen, my parents can tell something's wrong. Steve paid for the entire wedding, I say flatly, without asking me. Mom's eyes narrow. This man is trying to buy you, Marcus, just like he's been buying Lisa's loyalty her entire life. I drive straight to Lisa's apartment, my anger building with every mile. She answers the door looking tired but hopeful. We need to talk about the wedding, I say, brushing past her, specifically about how Steve is taking it over. Her face falls. What are you talking about? The venue called. Steve paid for everything, and I just found this. I hold up my phone, showing her the revised guest list I discovered in our shared wedding planning document. He's added 37 people I've never heard of. Business associates, friends. Who are these people, Lisa? She sits heavily on the couch. He wants to introduce me to his world. As what? His daughter? His ex-girlfriend's daughter? Which lie are we going with? As his daughter, she whispers. He wants to use the wedding to tell everyone the truth. I laugh bitterly. So our wedding isn't about us at all. It's Steve's coming out party as your father. It's not like that. Then what is it like? I demand. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like Steve is orchestrating this entire thing to suit his redemption narrative before he dies. Lisa breaks down, her shoulders shaking with sobs. You don't understand. He's been there my whole life, Marcus. Secret visits, phone calls when his wife was away on business. He'd take me to lunch in towns where nobody knew us. My mom would tell everyone I was at a friend's house, but I'd be with him. I stare at her, realizing the depth of this deception. Your mother knew? All this time? Of course she knew. She loved him until the day she died. Before I can respond, there's a knock at the door. Lisa freezes, her eyes wide. Are you expecting someone? I ask. She shakes her head, but something in her expression tells me she knows exactly who it is. I open the door to find Steve standing there, looking even more gaunt than he did 3 days ago. Marcus, he says with a nod, I was hoping to find you here. May I come in? I step aside wordlessly, watching as he walks to Lisa and kisses her forehead, a gesture so paternal it makes my skin crawl to think I ever believed he was her ex. I came by your office, Steve says, turning to me. Your assistant said you'd called in sick. You went to my workplace? I ask, incredulous. Why? Why? I wanted to discuss the wedding arrangements. I hope you don't mind that I've taken care of the finances. Consider it my gift to you both. A gift usually involves asking what someone wants first, I reply coldly. Steve sits in the armchair across from Lisa, his movements careful, deliberate. I understand your frustration, Marcus, but there's something you need to know about my relationship with Lisa. Dad, please. Lisa starts, but he raises a hand to silence her. I've been directing Lisa's life since she was born. He says bluntly, I chose her schools. I vetted her friends. I discouraged certain relationships I felt were inappropriate. The implication hits me like a punch. You've been sabotaging her relationships? Steve doesn't deny it. I wanted what was best for her. When she met you, I had you investigated thoroughly. Your background, your career prospects, your family, everything. You what? I look at Lisa, who won't meet my eyes. Did you know about this? Not until after we were engaged, she whispers. He told me he'd made sure you were suitable. I feel sick. So our entire relationship was manipulated from the start? Was any of it real, Lisa? Of course it was, she cries. I love you, Marcus. That's real. But would we even be together if your father hadn't approved of me first? The question hangs in the air between us. Steve stands slowly, wincing slightly. I should go. You two have things to discuss. He places a thick envelope on the coffee table. These are some letters I've written to Lisa over the years. I thought you might want to read them, Marcus, to understand our relationship better. After he leaves, I open the envelope with shaking hands. Inside are dozens of letters spanning decades, birthday cards, notes of encouragement, advice about school and careers, all signed Love, Dad, or simply S, with that heart emoji I've come to despise. You kept all of these? I ask, leafing through them. They were all I had of him sometimes, Lisa says quietly. I pull out a letter dated just after our engagement. Steve writes about being proud of Lisa for finding a suitable partner and mentions plans for establishing a more public relationship after the wedding. He knew all along, I say, realization dawning. He was planning to use our wedding to come out as your father from the very beginning. Lisa doesn't deny it. He wants to move in with us after the wedding, she admits. The cancer treatments are taking a toll, and he doesn't want to be alone. I stare at her, stunned. Were you ever going to tell me this? Or were you just going to spring it on me after we were married? I was going to tell you, she insists. I just needed to find the right time. The right time would have been before I proposed, I say, standing up. I need some air. Marcus, please. She reaches for me, but I step back. I'm canceling the wedding vendors, I tell her. All of them. If Steve wants to throw himself a coming out party, he can do it without using our marriage as the backdrop. Lisa's face crumples. You can't do that. Watch me. As I reach the door, she calls out, her voice breaking. Marcus, I'm pregnant. I freeze, hand on the doorknob. What did you say? I'm pregnant, she repeats, tears streaming down her face. 8 weeks. I found out yesterday. I turn slowly to face her, searching for any sign she's lying, but the fear and vulnerability in her eyes seems genuine. Is this another manipulation? I ask, hating how cold my voice sounds. Another play orchestrated by you and Steve? She shakes her head, wrapping her arms protectively around her middle. No, this is real. This is ours. I lean against the door, suddenly exhausted. A baby. Our baby. Growing inside a woman I'm no longer sure I know at all. I need time to think, I tell her. Don't call Steve. Don't tell him about the baby. Just give me space to figure out what I want. As I walk to my car, I realize that no matter what I decide about Lisa and our future, I'm now permanently tied to the Calloway family drama, a drama that's been unfolding for decades before I ever entered the picture. I sit in the hospital waiting room, watching nurses bustle past in colorful scrubs. The antiseptic smell burns my nostrils as I check my watch for the 5th time in 10 minutes. Steve's been in treatment for 2 hours now. When Lisa told me Steve wanted to meet me here alone, I almost refused. But something about the vulnerability in her eyes, when she mentioned his rapidly deteriorating condition, made me agree. That, and the tiny life growing inside her, our baby, the innocent party in all this mess. A nurse approaches. Mr. Reynolds? Mr. Calloway is asking for you. I follow her through double doors into the oncology ward. Steve sits reclined in a treatment chair, an IV dripping clear fluid into his arm. The fluorescent lights accentuate his jaundiced skin and the hollows beneath his cheekbones. He looks 10 years older than he did at dinner just weeks ago. Marcus. His voice is weaker than I remember. Thank you for coming. I take the chair beside him, unsure what to say. The silence stretches between us, punctuated by the steady beep of machines monitoring other patients. I'm dying, Steve says finally, his green eyes so like Lisa's, meeting mine directly. Faster than the doctors initially thought. I'm sorry, I say, and mean it despite everything. Steve adjusts himself in the chair, wincing. I've made many mistakes in my life, Marcus. The kind that haunt you at night when you can't sleep. The kind that make you wonder who you really are. I watch as he absently traces the tube running into his arm. Lisa was my biggest mistake. Not her existence, she's the best thing I've ever done. But how I handled it, hiding her, teaching her to lie about who she was, who I was to her. Why are you telling me this? Because I need you to understand. His voice cracks slightly. I robbed her of a normal life. I made her complicit in my deception from the time she was old enough to understand words. Do you know what that does to a child? To grow up knowing you're a secret that would destroy your father's real family if discovered? I think about Lisa, about the elaborate web of lies she's maintained her entire life, and feel a pang of sympathy despite my anger. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Steve continues. I don't deserve it. But Lisa, he looks away, blinking rapidly. Lisa deserves a chance at an honest life. Then why orchestrate this whole wedding charade? I ask, unable to keep the edge from my voice. Why try to buy me off? Why hijack our relationship for your redemption story? Steve's shoulders slump. Because I'm selfish. Even now, facing death, I'm trying to control everything. Old habits. He attempts a smile that comes out as a grimace. I've canceled the wedding arrangements I made. The venue, the vendors, it's all been released. This should be your decision, not mine. I'm stunned into silence, searching his face for signs of manipulation. I've written Lisa out of my will, he adds quietly. She doesn't know yet. Everything goes to a trust that will support her and the baby, but she won't have direct access to it until she completes a year of therapy. You know about the baby? He nods. She told me yesterday. I'm going to be a grand grandfather. His voice breaks on the word. A grandfather my grandchild will never know. Against my better judgment, I feel my anger softening. What do you want from me, Steve? I want you to love her enough to demand the truth from her. Always. His hand trembles as he reaches for a cup of water. She's spent her whole life living in shadows I created. Help her step into the light. 2 days later, Lisa and I sit in my apartment, a notepad between us with a single heading, the truth. Below it, we've listed everyone who needs to know the full story. My parents, her extended family, our friends, Steve's colleagues. Are you sure about this? Lisa asks, her voice small. Once we tell everyone, there's no going back. That's the point, I say, taking her hand. No more secrets, no more lies. It's the only way forward for us. She nods, her free hand unconsciously resting on her still flat stomach. I've started seeing Dr. Winters, she says. The therapist Steve recommended. How was it? Terrible. She gives a watery laugh. She made me talk about the first time I remember lying about who Steve was. I was 5. Her voice breaks. 5 years old, Marcus, and already keeping this massive secret. I pull her into my arms, feeling her tears dampen my shirt. We're going to break this cycle, I promise. For our baby. The family meeting is as difficult as we expected. We gather everyone in my parents' living room, my mom and dad, Lisa's aunt and uncle who raised her after her mother died, her cousin Amy, and Steve, who insisted on being present despite looking like he might collapse at any moment. My mother sits rigid on the couch, her lips pressed into a thin line as Lisa tells the complete truth for the first time. How Steve had an affair with her mother while married, how they conspired to keep Lisa's paternity secret, how the lie grew and mutated over decades until Lisa couldn't separate truth from fiction anymore. I understand if you can't forgive me, Lisa says, looking directly at my parents, but I love your son, and I'm carrying your grandchild. I'm asking for a chance to prove I can live honestly. My father, who hasn't spoken a word throughout the entire explanation, finally clears his throat. This isn't just about forgiveness, Lisa. It's about trust. How do we know this is the last lie? You don't, I interject. You have to take it on faith, the same way I am. Mom looks at me sharply. You're still planning to marry her? After all this? Yes, I say firmly, but not the wedding Steve planned. Something small, something honest. Steve speaks up from his chair in the corner. I've been the architect of this deception for 30 years. If you need someone to blame, blame me, not Lisa. My mother's expression softens slightly as she takes in his frail appearance. We all make choices, Mr. Calloway. Lisa made hers. Under my influence, he insists. Since she was a child. Amy reaches for Lisa's hand. I'll stand with you, whatever you decide. One by one, the others nod their agreement. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a willingness to try. Our wedding is nothing like the elaborate affair Steve originally planned. We gather at a small chapel with just 20 guests, the people who know the whole truth. Lisa wears a simple white dress, and I wear a suit I already owned. Steve walks her down the aisle. No pretense, no lies. He is introduced to everyone as Lisa's father, Steve Calloway. The weight of truth seems to straighten his spine despite his illness. Before we exchange vows, Lisa steps to the microphone, unfolding a piece of paper with trembling hands. For most of my life, she begins, I've lived a lie. I've pretended my father was someone he wasn't. I've hidden parts of myself that felt too complicated to explain. I've become so accustomed to deception that it felt normal. She looks up, meeting my eyes. But standing here today, I promise to live in truth. No more secrets, no more lies. Not with Marcus, not with any of you, and not with myself. There isn't a dry eye in the chapel. Steve deteriorates quickly after the wedding. Within 2 months, he's moved into hospice care. Lisa visits him daily, sometimes with me, sometimes alone. They talk for hours, conversations they should have had decades ago. I find her crying in our kitchen one night after a particularly difficult visit. He's not going to make it to Christmas, she says, leaning into me. And I keep thinking about all the wasted years, all the Christmases we could have had together openly if he'd just been brave enough. You can't change the past, I tell her gently, but you're breaking the pattern. That matters, she nods against my chest. My therapist says I need to forgive him, and myself, but it's so hard. It takes time. Steve passes away on a cold November morning. Lisa holds his hand as he takes his last breath. At the funeral, she stands openly as his daughter, receiving condolences from colleagues and friends who never knew of her existence until recently. 1 month later, Christmas Eve, we receive a package from Steve's lawyer. Inside is a letter addressed to my grandchild, sealed in an envelope with instructions not to open it until our child's 18th birthday. Along with it is a note for Lisa. She reads it aloud, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. My dearest Lisa, I have lived most of my life in shadows of my own making. My greatest regret is pulling you into those shadows with me. My greatest joy is seeing you step into the light with Marcus. The truth has set you free in ways I never had the courage to be. Love each other honestly. Raise your child in truth. Break the cycle I created. All my love, Dad. Lisa places a hand on her growing belly. We will, she whispers. I promise. As we sit by our Christmas tree, I realize that while our beginning was built on lies, our future doesn't have to be. Sometimes the most broken paths can still lead to the right destination, and sometimes the hardest truths can set you free.